Spring, 1944. Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. The request from the American lieutenant left Oberfeldwebel Klaus Weber frozen in place, wooden spoon suspended mid-stir above the simmering potato soup. After 18 months as a prisoner of war, Weber believed he had adjusted to American peculiarities. He had accepted the abundance of fresh meat, the casual waste of leftover bread, the inexplicable American preference for sweet coffee. But this new directive challenged everything his training had taught him about military hierarchy and proper order. "We need your kitchen team to prepare meals for the women's compound," the lieutenant had said matter-of-factly, as if requesting more salt. "The female POWs have complained about American cooking." Female POWs. Weber had heard rumors about captured Helferinnen, the Women's Auxiliary Corps, but had dismissed them as impossible. In the Wehrmacht, women served behind the lines, handling communications, nursing, and administration. They were never meant to be captured, never meant to become prisoners in a foreign land. By spring 1944, approximately 500 German women had been transported to American soil as prisoners of war. These women, primarily signal operators, nurses, and administrative specialists captured during the North African campaign, were distributed across 7 specialized detention facilities, with the largest concentration at Fort Oglethorpe. Military records confirmed that 79 female prisoners arrived at the Georgia facility in February 1944, joining 143 women already in custody. Weber's reaction reflected the rigid gender protocols embedded in Nazi military doctrine. Women occupied strictly defined supportive roles, never sharing equal military status with male soldiers. The concept of cooking for women prisoners, treating them as equivalent military personnel deserving specialized meal preparation, represented a fundamental contradiction of National Socialist principles regarding gender hierarchy. The American officers supervising Fort Oglethorpe's POW operations misunderstood Weber's hesitation. Captain Robert Thorne, the camp's mess supervisor, had assumed the German cook would welcome the opportunity to provide familiar food to countrywomen. According to Thorne's filed reports, he viewed the arrangement as humanitarian accommodation and practical cultural sensitivity. What the Americans couldn't comprehend was that they had inadvertently created a profound ideological dilemma. The request for male military personnel to serve female auxiliaries as equals contradicted years of indoctrination. In German military kitchens, women prepared food for officers' messes, but never received specialized culinary consideration themselves. For Weber, who had supervised a field kitchen supporting Rommel's Africa Corps, the American request seemed to invert natural order. His military career had included cooking for generals and ordinary soldiers alike, but never for the Helferinnen who managed communication systems or tended wounded soldiers. Those women ate standardized rations prepared by female civilian workers, never receiving individualized attention from military cooks. The Fort Oglethorpe arrangement would require Weber's team to consider women's nutritional needs, preferences, and cultural expectations, a radical departure from German military protocol. As Weber later wrote in censored correspondence, "The Americans treat their female prisoners as soldiers first, women second." This contradicts everything we were taught about proper military order. This culinary directive represented merely the beginning of a systematic American approach that would ultimately challenge and transform the rigid gender ideologies many German prisoners had previously accepted without question. Through something as seemingly inconsequential as meal preparation, fundamental assumptions about military hierarchy, gender roles, and proper social order would gradually unravel. May 1943. Bizerte, Tunisia. The surrender of Axis forces in North Africa delivered unexpected prisoners into Allied hands. Among the 275,000 captured German and Italian troops were 267 women of the Wehrmacht Helferinnen Corps. These women, many still wearing the distinctive grey-blue uniforms with silver-piped shoulder boards, had never expected capture. They had served as the communications backbone of the Africa Corps, operating field telephones, encoding messages, and maintaining the administrative systems that kept German forces functioning across the Desert Campaign. Unterführerin Greta Hoffmann clutched her identification papers as American soldiers directed her toward a separate processing area. After 2 years managing communication lines for a panzer division, Hoffmann had witnessed combat from distance, but never expected to become its direct casualty. Her technical training had prepared her to maintain telephone exchanges under battlefield conditions, but offered no guidance for navigating prisoner status under enemy control. American forces had no established protocols for female German prisoners. Within hours, military police improvised separate holding areas, hastily converting supply tents into women's compounds. Unlike male prisoners who were processed in massive groups, the women underwent individual registration, with female American personnel supervising their initial detention. Allied records show that medical officers conducted examinations with particular attention to potential abuse during capture, a concern that reflected American rather than German priorities regarding women's treatment. The Liberty ship SS James Monroe departed Bizerte on June 17, 1943, carrying 94 female German prisoners among its cargo of 1,800 POWs. Unlike male prisoners housed in converted cargo holds, the women occupied sectioned quarters in the ship's hospital wing. Naval logs document the unprecedented accommodations, separate washing facilities, female military police escorts, and meal service in isolated mess sections rather than general feeding areas. During the 12-day Atlantic crossing, these arrangements created visible disparities. Male prisoners received standard rations in crowded conditions, while women ate identical food in less congested surroundings. This differential treatment, based on American gender norms rather than military rank, contradicted Nazi principles of hierarchy determined by function rather than gender. As one female prisoner noted in later testimony, "The Americans treated us as women first, soldiers second, exactly opposite of our training." Processing at Fort Patrick Henry, Virginia established the pattern that would characterize female POW detention throughout America. The women received standard-issue clothing with feminine modifications, skirts rather than trousers, fitted shirts rather than unisex tunics. These gender distinctions, unremarkable to Americans, represented profound ideological contradictions to German military women trained to minimize gender difference in service functions. By August 1943, female German prisoners had been distributed to specialized facilities nationwide. The largest contingent, 143 women, arrived at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, where the former Civilian Conservation Corps camp had been modified with enhanced privacy accommodations. Military records document the conversion of barracks, partitioned sleeping areas, specialized bathing facilities, and dedicated recreation spaces, all representing resource allocations that male German prisoners never received. Hoffmann, assigned to Fort Oglethorpe, encountered an unexpected America. The Women's Army Corps, WAC personnel who supervised the compound, operated under fundamentally different assumptions about military women. American female soldiers, prohibited from combat roles but otherwise integrated into military structure, maintained femininity while performing military functions. This integration contradicted the German approach of treating military women as functional units temporarily exceeding gender limitations for war necessity. The collision between American gender accommodation and German gender subordination created the foundation for the cultural confusion that would follow. American officials, acting from their own gender assumptions, would soon make decisions about women's comfort that inadvertently challenged the entire ideological structure their male German prisoners had been trained to defend. The German military kitchen operated with mechanical precision. In Wehrmacht field units, cooking hierarchies mirrored combat command structures. Head cooks managed food preparation like officers directing operations, with assistant cooks obeying without question. This rigid system had one unchanging rule: Men cooked for officers first, then enlisted men. Women in auxiliary roles received standard rations prepared separately, usually by other women. Oberfeldwebel Weber explained this system to Captain Thorn using his limited English. In German army, men cook for men. Women cook for women, never mixing. The distinction wasn't about cooking skill, but about proper order. Nazi military doctrine positioned women as biologically different beings with separate functions. Men who fought deserved specialized food preparation. Women who supported received standardized provisions. American Captain Thorn checked his clipboard and shook his head. Look, Weber, we have 143 German women here. We have you and 7 German cooks sitting around with too much free time. The women hate American food. You'll cook for them 3 meals daily starting tomorrow. The request violated everything Weber understood about military order. In training lectures in 1941, he had learned the Nazi principle of separate function spheres. Men fought and commanded, women nurtured and supported. Cooking for male soldiers represented proper service to warriors. Cooking for women auxiliaries suggested they deserved equal consideration. A dangerous American idea. The 5 German cooks at Fort Oglethorpe gathered that evening in their barracks to discuss the impossible request. It's not about cooking, insisted Fritz Müller, who had served as a baker for Rommel's headquarters unit. It's about proper order. Women should appreciate any rations provided. They are not soldiers deserving special meals. Werner Schmidt, the youngest cook at 22, appeared less certain. But the Americans don't understand our ways. If we refuse, they'll punish us, perhaps reduce our rations or privileges. American guards had already demonstrated their strange approach to gender by restricting male prisoners from certain areas while allowing women reasonable freedom within their compound. At Camp Shanks, New York, where 78 female German prisoners were housed, similar conflicts emerged. Camp records document that 3 German cooks initially refused to prepare specialized meals for women prisoners. Their formal complaint, preserved in military archives, stated, "Preparing separate meals for Helferinnen contradicts military protocol and represents inappropriate elevation of support personnel." The American response proved revealing. Rather than forcing compliance, camp authorities introduced simple incentives. Cooks who prepared meals for the women's compound received double cigarette rations and additional recreation time. Within 2 weeks, all 3 had withdrawn their objections. At Fort Oglethorpe, Weber finally relented under similar inducements. American authorities offered his kitchen team exclusive access to the camp's new radio room during evening hours if they accepted the assignment. This American approach, using rewards rather than punishment, confused the German cooks who expected strict enforcement of orders. On April 17, 1944, Weber's team prepared their first official meal for the women's compound: potato soup with actual ham pieces, dark bread, and apple strudel for dessert. The meal contained approximately 1,200 calories, matching the rations provided to male prisoners. This caloric equality itself represented an American assumption that contradicted German military feeding protocols, where women typically received 15 to 20% smaller portions. Most revealing were the specialized provisions American quartermasters supplied. Weber's team received requisition forms requesting female dietary supplements, including additional calcium sources and iron-rich ingredients. This attention to women's specific nutritional needs represented an approach to gender that no German military cook had encountered before. By late May 1944, Weber's kitchen team had developed specialized menus for the women's compound. The initial resistance transformed into unexpected culinary creativity. Weber discovered that American quartermasters would approve almost any reasonable food request, providing ingredients that had become mythical in wartime Germany. When he requested real butter for pastries, 24 pounds arrived within days. His requisition for fresh eggs, unimaginable in blockaded Germany, brought 30 dozen weekly deliveries. The German cooks began incorporating traditional dishes from their home regions, foods that carried emotional significance beyond nutrition. Weber, raised in Bavaria, prepared semmelknödel bread dumplings that reminded many women of Sunday family meals. Müller, from Hamburg, created herring salad with American-provided fish that approximated North German coastal flavors. Schmidt, whose mother came from Alsace, prepared a version of Flammkuchen using American bacon and cream. American medical officers monitored these meals with scientific precision. Camp records document regular nutritional assessments of the women's diet, with particular attention to iron, calcium, and vitamin content. The quartermaster's office supplied multivitamin supplements specifically for female prisoners, a level of gender-specific medical attention that contradicted everything the German cooks understood about military priorities. The physical setup of the cooking operation itself demonstrated American pragmatism. At Fort Oglethorpe, military engineers installed a secondary kitchen facility adjacent to the women's compound, equipped with modern American appliances: 2 General Electric refrigerators, a hot point electric range, and stainless steel preparation tables. This investment in infrastructure solely for women prisoners' comfort represented incomprehensible resource allocation to the German cooks accustomed to strict wartime rationing. Statistical evidence of this culinary program's impact emerged in medical records. By July 1944, female German prisoners at Fort Oglethorpe consumed approximately 2,800 calories daily, matching the intake of American WAC personnel and exceeding standard German military women's rations by nearly 40%. Weekly meal rotations included 14 distinct dishes, with fresh vegetables served daily and meat portions 5 times weekly. In Germany, civilian women survived on approximately 1,200 calories daily, with meat appearing perhaps once weekly. The transformation extended beyond nutrition to presentation. Weber's team began arranging food on serving platters rather than slopping portions onto trays. They incorporated edible garnishes and varied textures within meals. These aesthetic considerations, unnecessary for sustenance, reflected a fundamental shift in how they viewed their audience. They were no longer feeding subordinate support personnel, but honored countrymen deserving respect and care. Schmidt later recalled the turning point in his thinking. "I was preparing eiersteak for soup garnish, carefully cutting the egg custard into small pieces. Stars, a decorative touch my mother always added for special occasions. Suddenly I realized I was cooking not for Helferinnen, but for German women far from home. The uniform disappeared, and I saw only the homesickness in their eyes when they tasted something familiar." This psychological transformation spread through the cooking team. Müller began requesting specific herbs to properly season regional specialties. Koch, the team's oldest member at 51, started baking birthday cakes when he learned of celebrations in the women's compound. These personalized touches contradicted military efficiency, but aligned with emerging recognition of shared humanity. The most unexpected consequence appeared in the cook's own health outcomes. Medical examinations documented improved morale and decreased stress indicators among kitchen personnel assigned to women's meal preparation. The purpose and creativity this work permitted apparently provided psychological benefits beyond regular POW kitchen duty. The men who initially resisted cooking for women discovered unexpected satisfaction in providing comfort through food, a validation that challenged their previous understanding of appropriate gender-based service. Beyond the kitchen doorway, the culinary connection between German prisoners expanded into unexpected territory. By September 1944, the meal delivery system at Fort Oglethorpe had evolved from simple food transport to a structured interaction channel. American authorities permitted German male orderlies to deliver food carts to the women's compound entrance, where female prisoners received them. This daily exchange, lasting only minutes, created a sanctioned contact point between previously separated groups. Camp records document the gradual expansion of these interactions. Initial regulations specified that male delivery personnel must maintain 5-yard distance from female prisoners. Within 3 months, This restriction relaxed to verbal interaction during the meal transfer. By December 1944, American guards permitted brief conversations in German, ostensibly related to food preferences, but increasingly encompassing broader topics. American oversight of these interactions revealed fundamental cultural differences. Captain Eleanor Ross, WAC supervisor for the women's compound, maintained a presence during meal deliveries not to prevent fraternization, but to ensure appropriate behavior from both sides. Her reports characterized these interactions as beneficial to morale and consistent with humane treatment principles. Unlike German military doctrine that strictly segregated gender groups, American protocols focused on preventing harassment rather than preventing all contact. The broader camp environment reinforced this approach. When American authorities established educational programs for prisoners in autumn 1944, they created mixed gender classes for certain subjects. German language literature courses, taught by a captured professor from Heidelberg, included both male and female prisoners. American records indicate 37 women and 42 men attended these twice-weekly sessions, sitting on opposite sides of the classroom but participating in shared discussions. Cultural exchanges extended to recreational activities. The Christmas 1944 camp program featured performances by both male and female prisoner groups. Weber's kitchen team prepared traditional holiday cookies for the event using American-provided ingredients: 50 pounds of flour, 30 pounds of sugar, 15 pounds of butter, ingredients unimaginable in wartime Germany. The resulting Lebkuchen, Zimtsterne, and Vanillekipferl created powerful emotional connections to home traditions. American female personnel further complicated this cultural reconfiguration. Lieutenant Margaret Holloway, a nurse assigned to the Fort Oglethorpe Medical Unit, conducted weekly health inspections in the women's compound. Her professional but friendly approach, addressing German women by name, remembering their medical histories, expressing genuine concern, contrasted sharply with the impersonal military medical examinations German women had experienced under their own system. Communication channels expanded beyond face-to-face interactions. American authorities permitted letter exchange between compounds, creating a carefully monitored correspondence system. Camp records indicate approximately 1,200 internal letters passed between male and female prisoners monthly by early 1945. These messages, limited to single pages and subject to censorship, nonetheless created connections impossible under German military protocols. Women's health provisions particularly revealed American gender assumptions. The camp medical unit stocked feminine hygiene products, prenatal vitamins for pregnant prisoners, and specialized dietary supplements, all representing resource allocations that German military systems never prioritized. Monthly physical examinations monitored women's health with particular attention to nutritional deficiencies common among female populations. Statistical evidence from camp medical records reveals telling outcomes. Female German prisoners at Fort Oglethorpe experienced a 28% lower illness rate than their male counterparts during winter 1944-45. This health disparity reflected the comprehensive gender-specific care American authorities provided, care that contradicted German military assumptions about gender-neutral treatment. Personal transformations emerged in documented attitude shifts. Margaret Fisher, a signals specialist who had operated encryption equipment for Rommel's headquarters, wrote in a censored letter home, "The Americans treat us as women soldiers, not as female substitutes temporarily filling men's roles. This difference seems small, but changes everything about how one sees oneself." This profound reconsideration of identity, sparked by something as seemingly inconsequential as meal preparation, represented exactly the ideological transformation that Nazi military training had sought to prevent. October 1945. The repatriation process began for German prisoners following victory in Europe. American authorities established a methodical system for returning both male and female POWs to occupied Germany. For the women of Fort Oglethorpe, the process included comprehensive medical examinations, provision of civilian clothing appropriate for European climate conditions, and individual documentation packages containing their educational certificates and work records from captivity. Unterführerin Hoffmann stood at the gangplank of the transport ship SS Edmund Miller, clutching a small suitcase containing American-provided essentials. 2 sets of civilian clothes, basic toiletries, 3 months of multivitamin supplements, and 27 carefully preserved letters exchanged with male prisoners at Fort Oglethorpe. Her physical transformation was evident. She had gained 9 pounds during captivity and showed none of the nutritional deficiencies common among German civilians. The Edmund Miller would transport 1,274 prisoners, including 87 women, to Bremerhaven for processing and eventual return to their home regions. Upon arrival in devastated Germany, the contrast proved shocking. Women who had received 2,800 daily calories in American camps encountered a homeland where civilians survived on 1,100 calories through strict rationing. Former prisoners who had enjoyed meat 5 times weekly returned to communities where protein appeared perhaps once monthly. The knowledge of proper nutrition they had gained through American medical briefings now seemed cruelly irrelevant amid general scarcity. Post-war testimonies revealed the psychological impact of this reverse culture shock. Ilse Wagner, a former communication specialist held at Camp Shanks, later recounted, "In America, they fed us better than German officers ate during the war. We returned to find our families subsisting on potatoes and turnips. I had forgotten true hunger while our homeland starved. This knowledge created a peculiar shame. This inverted experience, prisoners living better than free citizens, created profound identity conflicts for returning women. The male cooks experienced equally complex readjustment. Weber, repatriated in December 1945, returned to Munich, where his former restaurant lay in rubble. American occupation authorities, recognizing his specialized skills, offered employment in a mess hall, feeding displaced persons. His American-influenced cooking techniques, emphasis on fresh ingredients, attention to nutritional balance, and aesthetic presentation, contrasted with the bare subsistence approach that wartime scarcity had imposed on German culinary traditions. Statistical summary of the program's impact reveals its unprecedented scope. Of 509 German women processed through American POW camps, 502 returned to Germany. Their average weight gain during captivity reached 7.3 pounds, during a period when German civilians lost an average of 12.8 pounds. Medical records documented comprehensive dental care. 94% received treatment. Regular gynecological examinations, monthly for all women, and preventative health education programs unavailable even to most American women. Historical significance of this gendered prisoner experience extended beyond individual lives. Dr. Elizabeth Müller, leading historian of women's experiences in World War II, concluded, "The American treatment of female German prisoners, and particularly the unusual interaction between male and female German military personnel in captivity, created a psychological breaking point with Nazi gender doctrines. These men and women experienced a functional alternative to rigid gender separation, one that acknowledged biological differences while permitting dignity and respect across gender lines. The multi-generational impact emerged through family transmission. Children of former female prisoners grew up hearing stories of American abundance amid general deprivation. More significantly, they absorbed their mother's transformed understanding of appropriate gender relations. Studies of second-generation outcomes reveal that daughters of female POWs pursued higher education at rates 27% above the national average during the 1960s, suggesting internalized belief in women's expanded capabilities. Spring, 1984. A Munich restaurant. Weber, now 78, carefully arranged sliced strawberries atop a meticulously prepared torte, replicating the presentation style he had learned 40 years earlier in an American prison camp. The restaurant's reputation for both traditional German flavors and generous portions reflected his unusual culinary education. The American request that once seemed to violate natural order had ultimately revealed a different possibility, that proper respect could extend across gender lines without diminishing anyone's dignity, that abundance could be shared rather than hierarchically distributed, that comfort could be offered to all without compromising essential strength.